So I wanted to get my thoughts down, my thoughts out about everything that's been happening over the last few days, last week. And I made a few notes because I've got a lot to say about my experience and the experience of some of my friends and my family. And I just felt that I wanted to get it out there. So, listen if you want to listen, don't listen if you don't want to listen, but just to give out some experiences of what it's been like to have some of these old feelings come back up, some of the things that I've been living with, that people I know have been living with as a day-to-day. And I think what happened to George Floyd and the reaction of everybody has made me and other people actually stop and think, hold on a minute, this isn't okay. Like, what has been happening is not okay. So I'm going to give you some examples of things that have happened to me in my lifetime that I carry with me. Not necessarily every day, but they're buried in there deep. So there's a lot, but it is what it is. So first of all, I remember being young, but we came to England when I was about 7, and I remember being quite young and being when we lived in Birmingham, I think at this point, and it's probably about 10 years old. We were in a school, my sister and I, like the only black kids in the school, and it was around the time of the first Iraq War, and I remember there was a nickname that kids used to call me, and it was Iraqi Paki. So obviously at the time I didn't fully understand, but then you look back at the ignorance of it, to use the word Paki, which is obviously absolutely disgusting to use towards anyone. And it's just the sheer ignorance of it. And you think, where does a 10-year-old child learn this kind of behaviour when you look back? But at the time, I was thinking, well, what's wrong with me? And I didn't quite understand why people would call me this. I remember being around that same age, walking to the shops with my sister, and we went to go get some food or something, and there was this group of kids outside, and one of them came up to me. He was in the older school, I was in primary school at this point, he was in the secondary school, and he came up to me and just started hitting me, and his friends were laughing and egging him on. My sister's there, she's screaming, like, I'm 10, 11 years old, I don't know what to do, she doesn't know what to do. And that same group of kids, I remember riding my bike one day, and I fell off my bike near those same shops, funny enough, and one of these older kids was walking past, and he said to me, he stood over me and he said, I hope you die, you black bastard. I was 11. I think these are quite visceral and overt signs of racism, but I think going through life, the older I've gotten, the less these things have been happening, but the more underlying things I've been dealing with. The look that sometimes people give you, the comments, the microaggressions, as we call them. You speak well, okay? It's just banter, okay? People wanting to touch my hair. Why do you want to touch my hair? I don't understand. Why do you want to touch my hair? I don't want to touch your hair. Why do you want to touch my hair? Because it's different to yours. You might feel like you're just being curious, but I'm not a pet. Black people are not pets to be petted because you want to touch their hair because it's different. So we talk about white privilege, and one of the things that sticks out to me is one question I'd ask you. So to all my friends who are racialized as white, have you ever, how do you feel when you walk into a shop or you walk out of a shop and the alarm goes off? The beeper in Tesco's or Marks and Spencer's, wherever, the security beeper. When you walk out and that alarm goes off, how does that make you feel? Because for me, and a lot of people that look like me, my immediate reaction is, they're going to think I stole something. Now, that may never have crossed your mind before, but there's a lot of people who listen to this who look like me that will say, that's exactly what I think. So this is just a small example of the things that we experience, that you may not have experienced. Being followed around the shops, feeling extra pressure to smile and be extra pleasant so you don't look like you're posing a threat to someone. I'm 6'4", I'm black, I'm a big guy. Now, Some people will say, oh, that might just be intimidating because you're a big guy. But the reality of the situation is the way that the media has portrayed us, the way that sometimes we've portrayed ourselves through some of our music and through the movies that are out there, and the way society has profiled us, means that we have to make that extra effort to pose less of a threat, which is something that you just have to carry every day. So you have to strap on this armor of, all this weight to say, oh, I'm going to have to make an extra effort today, or an extra effort today. And it becomes part of your psyche. You don't even think about it anymore. I remember once doing a gig, years ago, I did a gig, and I finished the gig. This is in Loughborough. And I finished the gig, and I was packing up, and this guy comes over. He was like, oh, I really enjoyed that, do you play around here, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, having a good chat with him. And he turned around and said to me, oh, don't worry about those guys that were making all those racist comments. I had no idea that anybody was making racist comments. But I've just played there for like 2 hours. A lot of people enjoyed it, I like to think. And then I'm thinking, while I'm enjoying myself and entertaining these people, there's people in this room who are making comments about me based on where I'm from, how I look, the colour of my skin. Nothing to do with my music, nothing to do with me as a person. They just hate me because I'm black. And I just remember feeling so sick and disappointed, and just the whole thing just made me so sad. But again, you bury it, you pack your stuff up, and you carry on. I've been stopped by the police multiple times with bullshit excuses. We didn't like your lane discipline. Or, yeah, we're not sure, we thought you were somebody else. I've heard that one a few times. We thought you were someone else. That feeling of humiliation you have when people walk past and they look at you and you think, do they think I'm a criminal? I'm not a criminal. That's that feeling when you apply for jobs and you send a CV. Now, my name, my heritage, I have Muslim family, I have Christian family, I've got a Muslim name. Regardless of my faith, it doesn't matter either way to anybody with any kind of intelligence. But to some people it does, and you wonder, some of these people that you see on TV saying these things and doing these things, these people have jobs, these people are hiring managers, these people are teachers, these people are members of high-ranking society that have an influence on your life and your career. Is my CV going to come across the desk of somebody who has an influence on my career that's going to look at my CV and say no? Thankfully, I've been very lucky, and I've been very blessed, and I've worked very hard. So I've been able to have a successful career to date. But I wonder how many times in my life that somebody's looked at my CV and gone, nah, without actually considering me as a person. I remember my parents telling me when I was young, and that's probably in my early teens, my mum said to me, she said, son, you're going to have to work harder than your friends to get to the same position. And I never really understood that at the time. I thought, what's she talking about? Because I was young, I was naive, I had a diverse group of friends. We used to call ourselves the United Nations, because we had people from every walk of life, country, social standing. We didn't care. We all went to the same school. We were just a group of guys that really cared about each other. So in my mind, this didn't make any sense. But the older I've gotten, the more I've realised that she was right, because there's certain things that you can say or do, the ways that you can behave, and much as I'm a British citizen, we are made to feel a lot of the time, this is not your country, mate. Go back to where you come from, mate. You are not one of us. Therefore, the way that I react or act towards things, the things that I feel I'm entitled to are different, and I've always been a little bit different because I've always had that thing in the back of my mind of I can't react a certain way to certain things because people will expect me to react a certain way to certain things. I can't be angry in public because it's an angry black guy it would be an angry black woman. And that's how people get characterized, the angry black woman. I'm Nigerian by birth. That's my heritage, that's my culture. We are very loud and boisterous people. And I've come across many people in my life from Nigeria who've come to the UK, and they're just themselves. But because it's so different culturally to the British way of life, the sort of subtle, non-boisterous kind of way of life, when Nigerians are extra, or we're upset about something, we gesticulate, we talk loudly. If you see two Nigerians talking about sport or politics, you think they're going to fight. That's just the way that we are. But people see that as he's aggressive, or he's always shouting, or he's always getting upset. I've seen and I've heard these things said about people that I've worked with before, and I've had to have conversations with colleagues, with work colleagues, and say, hey mate, look, brother, sister, this is what people are expecting you to be like. This is the brush that you're being tarred with, because people are too insular in their own minds to understand that different cultures behave in different ways. So having to counsel people and give advice to people to not be themselves, and I feel sick for having done that, because why should I give that advice to somebody? But at the same time, I know that if I didn't do that, that person wouldn't advance, that person wouldn't be as successful as they need to be, they wouldn't be able to progress, because they would be held back by this constant weight of expectation, this constant feeling of people looking down at you because of the way that you are, the way that you behave, the way that you've been culturally brought up to behave. There are so many different cultures around the world that act in different ways, and it's a beautiful mishmash of cultures, of people being boisterous, people being colourful, loud. We celebrate these things when we go on holiday, but God forbid that they come to the UK and people behave in this way. So it leads me to think, I've got a 2-year-old son. We've got a 2-year-old son, myself and Sophie. We've got Gabriel, and I've been watching him and looking at him this week, and I must admit there's a few times I've cried, because I thought, what are we going to tell him? What world is going to be there for him when he gets older, when he gets to 10, 11, 12, and starts to really understand what's going on around him? What's going to happen when that first kid or parent makes that comment towards him? Because it's going to happen. It happened to me. It's happened to, my family members. What's going to happen when that happens to my son and he comes home? How are we going to handle that? Do we need to practice what we're going to say to him? Do we need to think about it now to make sure that when the time comes, we're prepared so that he doesn't feel less than anybody else? How are we going to give him the confidence to rise in a world that looks at him like he's less than? Is that the world that we're going to be living in the next few years? I honestly don't know. I don't have any idea. When people tell me that, I've got some mates that have sent me these racist jokes, but I don't really like them, or blah, 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 and I'm thinking, why are you telling me this? Challenge your friends. It's no longer okay to be silent. It's no longer okay to be putting off that conversation with your friend or family because it will make you uncomfortable or make them uncomfortable. It should make them uncomfortable, because people are only uncomfortable about things that they know that are wrong. Because I'm not uncomfortable when you tell me about something that's right. If you tell me I've done something wrong, that's an uncomfortable feeling, because I know in my heart of hearts I'm wrong. That's what makes people uncomfortable. You should not be afraid of that. You should not be afraid to stand on the side of what is right and what is true, as opposed to just not wanting to offend somebody even though that you know that they're wrong. I myself have been guilty of this in the past. I won't be guilty of it again in the future. And the one last thing I'm going to say to my friends, my black friends, the N-word. No. That word is so filled with hate and bigotry and in my younger years, listening to music, watching certain films, I've used that word before because I thought it was okay. I thought it was cool. I didn't understand what I was putting out there in the world, because if we put out there in the world and we denigrate ourselves, how can we expect other people to raise us up? We have to raise ourselves up too. We can't be using that language towards ourselves, that language that was steeped and came from hatred and came from segregation and came from slavery and came from making us not even a second but third class citizens. We cannot change that word until we're trying to take the power back. That's not the kind of power that I want in my life. That is not power. That is defeat. So we need to stop using that word as a community, and we need to challenge our brothers and sisters that use that think, in my opinion, ignorantly, that is okay, because it's not okay. So, thank you for listening. Black lives do matter. All lives obviously matter, but my friends, I'm not trying to hear that right now. So if you're going to turn around to me and say all lives matter, lose my number. Delete me off Facebook, don't follow me on social media. I'm not interested. I just don't have any energy anymore, because Black Lives Matter, right now, what we're saying to you is Black Lives Matter as well. As well. Because if you've never had to experience the things I've just talked about, if you've never had to go through the things that you've seen on the television, if you've been watching the television or on social media or looking at the news in the last week or two, that's because you've lived a privileged life, and fair play to you, because I don't hold that against you and nobody holds that against you. But what I will not tolerate is somebody ignoring the fact or denying the fact that this is happening because they just haven't been able to live that themselves, or they can't see it. Educate yourself, read, listen to people, talk to your friends, ask questions. There is nothing wrong with having been wrong in the past, understanding that and moving forward and being right in the future, because nobody's the same person they were 5 or 10 years ago. It's never too late to learn. I don't hate anybody. You can be racist, you can hate me, I don't hate you back. If I can't carry that in my heart, that's not the way I was raised. But what I will say is, take the time to learn, take the time to speak to people, take the time to come out of your own bubble and realise that there are things that are going on in the world that are institutionalised, that are systemic in the way that this country has been built, in the way the United States has been built, other countries around the world. Think about the fact, people talk about crime and on black crime, and they use that and they throw that in your face as an excuse. Think about those areas of majority, black and ethnic minority areas here and in the States. If you did your history, if you knew your history, you would know that a lot of these areas were redlined. There's examples in America where there's areas, there's zones that were called redline zones, where in the 50s and 60s, black people were not allowed to buy property outside of these zones. They were only allowed, they would not be granted a mortgage, even if you had the same earnings, the same credit. Right up until the 90s, you could have the same earnings and credit as your white neighbour. They would not allow you a loan to buy your house, they'd be turned down. Because this is where the whole phrase, there goes the neighbourhood, came from. So it will bring down the value of the houses in the neighbourhood when you have a black family move in. So they redline these areas to have black people living in them. When they have to do budget cuts in the municipality, where do you think that the first cuts will go? It will go to the black areas. So schools will get the cuts first. So the education, the transport infrastructure, the policing would be cut as well. And you'd have these areas that live in poverty with poor education, poor healthcare, poor policing. And then you wonder why generationally it's then harder for people to come out of these areas in a position of strength to be able to make their lives better, when all they've known is that environment. Statistically, it's going to be harder. Therefore, statistically, there's going to be more people living in poverty. So statistically, there's going to be more crime. And if everybody in that area is of black or ethnic minority, then statistically there's going to be more black on black crime. So don't use it as an excuse when it's actually been engineered for that to happen. And this is not a conspiracy theory. Go and look it up and do your reading. When people came from the Caribbean in the 50s, in the Windrush generation, they came to rebuild this country. As soon as they outlived their usefulness, it was put into law. Grandfather clauses were there for people to come over from Commonwealth countries, but any brown people that came here, it was almost enshrined that they could not progress. The areas that they had to live in, the type of jobs they could get. Guys, I could go on about this for a long time. I've talked enough. Read, read, read. Listen, listen, listen. And if you don't have anything positive or anything to say that's going to edify or raise people up, just shh, say nothing, because that's also okay in this day and age.